Stand up, ladies and gentlemen. It's back at you with another episode of Bigger and Louder. As always, I'm handsome face, too good to be true, Big Tony.
And I'm Bubblegum, Johnny D. Once you pop, you can't stop.
Bubblegum, I like it. I thought you might have been like a Tootsie Pop, man. Like a hard on the outside, soft in the middle, right? Like, I guess how many licks does it hit to get to the center, man?
Not enough. That's what I'm told. not enough.
Oh man, that's awesome. So listen, I know you're in the California still, man. Like, how's the weather out there, man?
Dude, we literally just had, I think, 10 days of 100 plus degree weather in a row.
100. Wow.
Like there are unfortunately like several fires now in SoCal. We got a break. I'd say like Thursday. No, excuse me, Wednesday. So Wednesday, the weather broke. So that was like, for those that care, 2 days ago. And it literally went from like over 100 down to mid 70s, low 80s.
No kidding.
And that's what I moved here for, that weather. Not the scorchers, but it's fine now. And like today, you walk outside, like right now, Friday night feels like a fall night, dude. That's what I'm looking forward to. How about you? The leaves turning yet over there?
Not yet. No, we haven't got a bunch of leafers coming out this way. I mean, listen, someone once said to me, New England is kind of like the firecracker of the U.S. around fall season because you got the changing of the leaves. It's just like a nice like fall environment.
Firecracker? What does that mean?
I don't know. It's just I don't know. It just means I guess like New England is just like that place to be for the fall season if you're coming out of state or if you want to like wear extra turtlenecks and bring your pumpkin spice coffee and just kind of like do outdoor things. It's like it's got its own little charm to it for a brief time between the months of October through the end of November. I will say that. But it's very short. So like if you're not in the area, it's kind of hard to get a hold of this kind of experience,
I would also recommend it. Like people always say like, hey, like when should I go to New York, for example, right? And I'm like, well, if you can't go in the spring, I would go in the fall because, and not to, to put it in the terms of our good friend, Billy Joel, you could take the Hudson River line and like literally go from New York City. If you went in to stay in the city, go upstate and see what Anthony's talking about, which is like that beautiful fall foliage, that the leaves turning from green to red to orange to brown and eventually falling off before the ground becomes painted with a beautiful glistening white snow.
You kind of sound like Bob Ross right there, man. Like, were you practicing that?
No, but that's exactly what I was going for, to try to paint the picture. So, I think like that's something that we could probably have like a consensus on. I think Northeast wins of all, like if you could vote for an area of the US to be in, Northeast wins the fall. I think without because
without a doubt.
That forget about just the colors, right? Like, because you're right, like with all the deciduous trees, right? Is that what they are? No. Oh my God, I'm going to sound like an idiot. Never mind.
Too late.
With all the trees that they have there, the leaves fall off. That's beautiful, but the crispness, like of the air, like you could go apple picking, pumpkin picking, and then it rolls right into Halloween. And we played with one of our buddies, football and lacrosse from Sleepy Hollow, New York, one of the scariest towns in America, right? Like that's got one of the best tales, the Headless Horseman and dear old Ichabod Bane.
Yeah, well, if you're again, not that I've been, nor can I ever comment, but if you're from Salem, Massachusetts, they're the ones who are saying no, like that's the place to be around Halloween season. If you're trying to compare, like which one sort of gets like the blue ribbon of paranormal activity or a history of witch trials and burning of conspiracy of witch things and that shit. I mean, that's a whole
human sacrifices, executions,
things like that,
right? unjust burnings. I think but you're right. I think like Salem, also in the Northeast, it definitely is probably I would say is number one. Salem is probably number one, but yeah, Sleepy Hollow's over there. And then, the rest of the Northeast is just scary.
Yeah. No, it totally is. I mean, on top
Place
of that,
to be for Halloween.
Yeah, no, it totally is. So by the way, did you catch that game last night with the Bills and the Dolphins, man, with Tua Tagovailoa, man? Like, see the concussion he had? It's like his third one, man. Did you see that shit?
Yes, I did see the hit. I also saw him being walked off the field and down the sideline between two guys. Damn it. Between two guys who were propping him up so he did not stumble over. And I know a lot of people are saying, immediately that, he should step down, he should retire. I posted immediately that he should as well. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they'll probably sign off on him returning in a few weeks. But, I think he needs to talk to his family. That's what I would do. What about you? What would you do?
Well, again, let me ask you this, because I haven't really, done too much homework on it, but it seems like the sense is like this is not his first or second concussion he has had in the NFL, and it seems like he's kind of like concussion prone, where it's actually raising a couple red flags, let alone like the longevity of one's health. Who is like concussion prone? Am I correct in understanding that? Because I haven't been too following him particularly, but it's like his third.
He's had so many. He's had several. He's had multiple in the NFL.
Yeah,
and an unknown amount before that.
At Alabama, right? Yeah. I mean, like, listen,
man,
like,
and on high school and before,
right.
That was a youth level.
I mean, look, man, like the thing with concussions is like ever since like the diagnosis of CTE, which is one of those, it's a degenerative diseases that do happen with multiple traumas to the brain. And again, not everyone is prone to them. Not everyone will get them, even if you have been in a contact sport for many years, but again, there's still like that fear, like, if you've been smacking your head around for years and years and years and years, it's like at some point, like you just become like a higher risk. I mean, look, at the end of the day, like he makes more money than both you and I. That's
we'll ever make in our entire lives.
Yeah. Right. In our life. Right. I understand like the need for, to play something because you do it, you love to do it. And it's just like, it's very hard, like to hang up the shoulder pads, or if you're a baseball player, hang up the mitt. If you're a basketball player, you hang up the sneakers, etc. I get it. There's a passion because like once you give it up, it seems like, okay, like life is as we know it is kind of like, you think you're going on like a downhill of your life. Like you've hit that peak and what else you're going to do. But the way I look at it is like he's made and is still making a lot more money than both you and I or the average person does make in a given day or a given year, excuse me. So the way I look at it is like, he can just take his time, take his money, and go do other endeavors. He never has to work another day of his life. What is the point of like doing all that work and all of a sudden like you're just stumbling around with your family in your mid 50s when you can barely understand who you are? You don't know who. It's the risk. The risk doesn't outweigh the reward. It doesn't. So I would just say to him, give it up. Quit while you're ahead. Just let it go and, go on with your life, be with your family, be with your kids, et cetera, et cetera. It's not worth any type of struggle later on. Cause there's that expression, if you burn the candle at both ends, you pay the price. And then realize what type of price you want to pay. I mean, I'm serious. You could laugh at
me. I don't know if that one applies here, but yes, but yeah, dude, you're not lying here. So, I just hope he does the right thing by his family and thinks about his future. But the good news is, we won't be talking about the Giants.
No, we will not. No.
Anthony and I had a production meeting, very, very thorough production meeting. And we said, we're not going to talk about the fucking Giants until they win some games. So be blessed. We will not be talking about fantasy until the Giants come back.
Yep.
But we'll keep you updated on some of this, hot button stuff because, we got some NFL players getting shot. We've got guys getting suspended or potentially, I'm not sure what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. But, for those of you unfamiliar, Deshaun Watson, quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, previously of the Houston Texans, had a proverbial shitload of sexual assault cases, civil suits that were, ultimately settled or dismissed several years ago when the Browns were signing him. But this guy's also guaranteed like over $200 million in his contract, guaranteed.
Right.
And he's not playing up to their standards or like really what they're saying NFL standards anymore.
Right.
Not for me to be the judge of that.
Right.
But from what I've seen, it's the Browns dog shit. So I just think, we'll keep you updated on some of that stuff, but that one's still developing. And, I hope the Browns at least don't have to eat that contract, should anything come from it. But.
Yeah. I mean, before we move, like just to quickly add to John's point, there's going to be no talk of football unless there's something completely cataclysmic that we can't avoid by talking. But right. Like, I guess I'll never understand it. You have all this money, all this opportunity. I don't care if you're, Deshaun Watson. I don't care if you're Tariq Hill. I don't care if you're fucking Tom Brady. Like, if you have all this money, like, why would you gamble, your reputation and therefore gamble like your earnings away? I'll never understand this. I'll never understand it. Like, most people struggle their whole lives just to be in a position like these people are, where they are financially set for and they're just playing a game. They're really not providing an added service, like, as an accountant would, or, being an attorney, or, someone who fixes cars. They're just playing a game for entertainment, and they make money on entertainment. So, like, the fact they make all this money and they can just gamble it away on just acting like fools off the field it always it's mind-boggling to me.
I mean, Anthony, that's not exclusive to athletes. People with money get away with anything. I mean, literally, if you're a billionaire, literally, you get away with like bad things, murder. Drunk driving, shit with fucking kids, man. Like, these people are, billionaires, and they're getting away with everything. These guys. So, I think, like, even what happened with Tyreek Hill, right? Recently, just to give you a brief again, guys actually on his way to the stadium Sunday for a game. Gets stopped by police. Altercation happens. We won't go into the details, but he ends up getting slammed on the ground. And now, there's a whole bullshit boiling up there. And it's just like, man, like, what's going on with these guys that think that they could just get away with anything, like you said? But it's pervasive across, anybody with money, because especially in America, especially, I shouldn't say that, because there are other countries where money can buy you all this type of access. And, I guess carte blanche, gets you, that get out of jail free card. It's just America. That's the way it is. Money buys you all that type of power, whether it's like, in the, I guess like judiciary, the legal system, or in the courts, or in the legislature, because you could go and bribe these people to make your fucking laws. Except we don't call it bribery. We call it a political action committee.
Lobbying.
Yeah, so,
basically what it is.
Whatever the fuck they want to call it, right? Like,
listen,
put whatever name it is. That's what it is.
John, there's an old expression. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called "money can make a blind man see again." That's a fact. You got money, people listen. They'll do whatever you want. You sweeten the pot up for them. You're right. Listen, it's not just the athletes. It's, a lot of, white collar corporate people, but for some reason, the athletes just tend to get more of the dirty end of the stick, because they're more in the public's eye, because they're part of the news almost every other day when doing things very well, whatever it may be. That's just the nature of like the media, right? Like,
that's so true. Just think about it. We can name it right off the top of our heads. In the last couple of days, we've had Shannon Sharp now allegedly having sex on Instagram Live.
Right.
We've had, the couple of things that we just mentioned again, Deshaun Watson and Tyreek Hill, and Tua, just right. Because that's basically, we have tons of kids playing youth football, and people need to know about, head injuries and things like that, and the risk involved, which is why I always applaud your mother for like holding you back. Your head doesn't need any more knocks in its head. Yeah. But you didn't play until high school, right? So that was that was cool. Like, I don't know when my son is gonna start full contact.
Yeah, if any.
But these number of stories, they keep growing. They're like, dude, they're all about athletes, because those are the guys that are like right front and center. What I do think is funny, that wasn't an athlete related, is Dave Grohl, right? Dave Grohl just came out and announced that he is now having another baby, but not with his wife, or I'm not sure if he's married, but not the same mother of his other children. It's like, what, 2024, good for you, but these celebrities run our headlines, because then if they were talking about like the fact that we're spending billions of dollars on wars we can't fund, but we still haven't fixed the water in Flint, Michigan, all these years. So
it is
what the
true.
fuck?
Yeah. And I think, my
It's all about distractions, right?
no, it
Distractions.
is. And I think the reason why, my last point to this, as to why athletes tend to get more, again, is because they're seen as role models, right? Like years ago when you had TV, now TV's blossomed to the internet, but it's like they're always in your face. No one cares about the new, like, yeah, people know about what Bill Gates does, but is Bill Gates in the news every day? Are they capturing what he's doing? No, it's kind of like TMZ. TMZ captures people live doing their everyday things, and it just, that's entertainment. It's like we want to put the entertainers on the spotlight for everything they do good, but even rip them to shreds when they do something even slightly bad, right? It's like that's just the nature of the beast, basically. It's really they're seen as role models, and what they do, people are going to do. They're going to copycat that, at all ages.
Role models is such an interesting topic, dude. Because when you get into the thing about role models, you say like, all right, like what do you want to do? Like, what is success? Like, because really, that's what you're talking about. Like, you're going to model yourself after someone that you view as being successful, right, in likely the same field, or at least like inspirationally, speaks to you of like what you want to do, like motivates you to go after. But it's like to put some of these people that you don't really know on a pedestal. Like, I get it. Like, everyone's human. I'm not judging people for making mistakes. But what I'm saying is, like, the person that that shows up every day, those are the ones that I think you put up, right? And like, I think everyone listening would agree wholeheartedly. Those are the people that make it. Like, the parents that work full time, still bring their kids to sports, or struggle to pay for their after kids programming, whatever that might be. Especially today, like club sports, everything, it's so expensive. Just to sign up for flag fucking football, it's $250. When we played high school CYO basketball, it was $10.
Inflation,
$10, dude. And that wasn't that long ago. That was early 2000s. So, 20 years ago, I guess, right? So, 20 years ago, things were much different even. And, I think out here, and this is like that's like a weird term, because it's Hollywood, right? It's all about it's Tinseltown. It's all about the distraction game. And I like that. I mean, like, look, like, I moved here for the industry, for the entertainment industry, because that to me is something that is like, what, we could talk about this another time. Like, while historically the industry's been recession proof, this day and age, and this is not, it necessarily is, like, there's been a lot of fluctuation because those companies that now own these studios are operating at a more macro level, right? But, to get back to my point, it's like, the things that people are now titillated by, the things that are getting people's attention, are what we've recurringly spoke about, these remakes that put the generation, our generation, the millennials, Gen Xers, even, back into life as it was, right? We're not concentrating on like life as it is, where we could get caught up in like the Ninja Turtles, or some of these Transformers remakes, right? Like, we're like, oh, like, these things are so cool. Like, now they're coming out with the animated versions. I think this generation, we're not being fed necessarily things that are making us think. Do you get that? Like, do you agree? Like, what the things that we're really relying on are like repeats. And then, of course, like, the big one is trauma. Like, this like murder documentary stuff, right? All of these things have us fixated on like what? Trauma. What I think is a crazy, crazy turn. And I haven't pulled up like ratings on this shit. I'm sure we could use the fucking AI. People are flocking to podcasts, shows, documentaries, all about murder.
Yeah. I mean,
all about the worst parts.
Well, listen, I came across a story, like, it's funny you said that, and I came across this story, a recent murder that actually took place. I came across a post by this person, like Jamila Jamil, who had mentioned a post about a woman in Switzerland who was brutally murdered by her husband. But get this, the catch is this: it wasn't just like a stereotypical like murder case you might hear on like evening news. It was he was her husband. He murdered her, and on top of that, he ended up taking parts of her body and started blending them up in a blender to get rid of the evidence. I mean, can you imagine that? Like the extent of like actually doing that?
I was shocked. And like, look, like when we saw this post, and, you know, thank you to her for bringing this up. And like, she brings up like tons of different issues to the point where I know like the algorithm has like pushed her down. But she called for men to even talk about this because apparently like they're afraid to. It's like, dude, this is the type of shit that they make the documentaries about. Like, what the fuck is going on here?
True crime stories. Yeah. Like Netflix
like
has
the
it all
violence,
on
the
them.
amount of violence, dude. You know, I started watching and we'll get more into this, Terminator 0.
Mm-hmm.
And it's anime. It is an anime show. It's my first even foray into that. Like I watched anime when I was a kid, and then I wasn't that into it. My daughter likes it, and now I'm trying this. But they talk about this premise that like humans might not be worth saving, like many of our scientific things are science fiction movies basically point to, dude, where it's like, wow, we are just turning absolutely everything we invent or touch into a weapon. And people are always thinking of these like ways to be more violent and more violent. And like, look what we have. You know, what did he do with it? What did he fucking do with it? Pour it down the drain? That's what I want to know.
I don't know, but I got the story up here as I'm pulling it through. But I want to ask you a question, something that you mentioned earlier, like, you know, with Jamila, she said she's happy that, you know, men should and can and should be talking about this. But like you mentioned that men would be afraid to talk about. You mentioned something about that. Like, what do you mean? Like men are afraid? Or
well,
men?
I mean, okay. So this is what I would say. I still think in 2024 that many men, not all men, and maybe not the majority, but enough men are so outspoken about their lack of quote unquote femininity or lack of the ability to let go of like all these masculine, like, you know, and dominant and well, I'll just fucking say it, like chauvinistic traits,
misogynistic, if you will.
Yeah, misogynistic, chauvinistic, whatever you want to call it. It's just like the
more their sensitive side. Their sensitive side is what you're trying to get at.
And I get it. There were times like where that, and times and places where that is still not possible, or like, you know, there was a time, and there are now places where that just wasn't possible, right? Where, you know, it's not great to show that soft side. But I feel that the lack of empathy that a lot of men have, and the inability to see or to just understand like a woman's point of view on so many topics, like, you know, so many things do, when many people get brought together, completely fall apart, right? You know, a person is smart, people are dumb. Okay. And when you had like the women's march about, you know, equality and Me Too, people were shitting all over that, and rather than like, you know, stand up and really back men, like, and Me Too, like I didn't go to any marches, but it was like there was like a lack of men, I felt like, that were involved there, you know, and you know, shame on me, right? Shame on us. It's like, but those are the type of things that like people are kind of afraid to do. You know, take for example, Anthony, like, you know, this is, you know, not to pat ourselves on the back, but not like 20 years ago now, exactly, Anthony and I were like the first straight dudes to be in our school play, right? Like we've mentioned that. And we were like, well, while we did it for necessarily not just love of the arts, we did it with like this openness, like, all right, like we don't know what we're stepping into. Like, we're not going to just come in here and be like the big tough football players. And you know, Anthony, like, what did we learn when we stopped? You said it to me earlier today.
Hey, tough guys can be sensitive, man. I mean, tough guys can do drama.
No tough guys on stage, right? No tough guys.
I mean, listen, we're not the only guys that during that year, even prior and post that, have made that transition. I mean, look at guys like Dwayne Johnson, Dave Bautista, John Cena. I mean, ironically, they're all in the WWE who've gone from like being the tough guys and doing like film. I mean, a lot of guys.
I have yet to be thanked by Cena or The Rock for any of the doors that we opened back in high school for that. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
he would have never even thought of throwing his hat in the ring for the Scorpion King or let alone the Tooth Fairy. Wasn't for my performance as King of the Monkeys in The Wiz.
Yeah. I mean, we should also be getting, to the late Jim Brown. We should be thanking him because he was in a bunch of films and TV shows even before us. Even like Larry Zonka, he did some shows, and Mike Ditka and all those guys from the late 70s into the 80s, and when they're at the top of their game.
Let's not forget Dan Marino and
Dan Marino too.
Ace Ventura. And the other thing is, like, I do follow her, and one of the other things she said is like men harm other men at higher rates than men harm women. And it's like men are just violent, dude.
Yeah.
Like we're violent people. Like, and like I'm guilty of it, to some sense too, where it's like I'm not acting on it, but it's like I'm definitely thinking like I could smack the fucking shit out of this guy right now.
Well,
like,
sure, yeah.
So like, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with us, man?
Well, listen, like there's two ways you go. Yeah, I mean, she's not wrong. Like, here's the thing. You forget there's a difference between the testosterone in men and the estrogen in women. And testosterone is an aggressive thing in a lot of men and how we react off of people, situations, and how we get defensive, and jealousy is a big thing, and, competitiveness. I think that when she mentions that, men harm men more than women harm men, I think it does become like sort of like territorial and, I don't want to use the word ownership, but it's dominance, male dominance over like, if you put, you and I or me and somebody else in the situation, and there's clearly a value of interest to the two of us, like who's going to own the situation to be like king of the hill, almost like the, basically the leader of the pack. I think it gets broken down to two parts. I think it's very important. When I think about, I'm going to break them to two age categories where I think this is really prevalent, and it's really, you have, to the story we were referencing about the unfortunate girl who got murdered by her husband in Switzerland. I think, right, men don't really talk about this because I think they are seen as, right, being, too soft, too sensitive. It really kind of, affects their manhood, right? I think you get a lot of that between the ages of 14 to 21 when, men going to the boys are pretty much, their way of handling and dealing with each other is like making fun of each other and, giving everyone shit, no matter the situation, and putting people down as a part of a, humor. And, that's where
that's a regional thing.
That's a regional thing too. On the other side of it, you get, I don't think that reapplies that to like an older crowd, because you got to remember, like, as boys grow into men and men become even more mature adults, like they have families, they're affiliated with their family members a bit more, and they can basically sympathize. Like, this was someone's child. Right. That's the the realization of it. Someone's poor child is no longer with us. And unfortunately, like, that's kind of the way it is. And I think men now can actually sympathize with that. I think it's just a bit harder as people are kind of going through the growing pains. On the other side of it, I think from the, there's the physical part of it, which we kind of talked about, which is, men are very quick to kind of like solve problems with their fists. Right. Or solve problems with using like very violent words in any given situation, because it's really like an attack on their manhood. It sounds very like, open-ended and kind of like gray. It's, but that's really kind of what it is.
I think you're on the right track. I mean, I'm not disagreeing there. I think you're kind of right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But going back to the story, just so people can understand like what actually happened. So I got the story up here. It's a former Miss Switzerland finalist, 38 years old. So a former Miss Switzerland found dead by her husband. So the story goes is that the husband apparently strangled her, and then from there decided to puree the body to get rid of the evidence and dissolve it in different chemicals. When he was arrested, his story, he told the police that she actually came after him with a knife and therefore had the need to attack her. Obviously, they're saying here, like, once the investigators and forensics team came on the scene and they examined everything, there was no such thing as foul play. Like, he actually strangled her. To the point of until she passed away, and basically handle the body there on after. I mean, it's really kind of this, like, I don't understand why one would do this. I mean, listen, everybody has marital problems. I don't know if he was on LSD or some other sort of contraband, but that's essentially the story. But the point is like the balls, like the actual balls you have, not to just take a life from someone in that regards, but like your wife, the mother of your children, and then from there you chop her up and then put her into a fucking blender. And then from there, thinking like you're just gonna like throw it into the fucking grass and like just think it's gonna like be dissolved. I mean, it just really rattled me to think like I don't know how to say this, but like it's just rattled me like just the motivation behind these actions. I mean, it's just really it's mind boggling.
I mean, look, dude, you're right, dude. Like, so look, the motivation, dude. Who could fucking know? I mean, they say in like. I mean, it's not like that far removed, but like, things have been done in our history that have been like beyond brutal at the state level, right? Like, like in China, like the death by 1,000 cuts was, legal to the 20s. We still give people the electric chair, don't we? Like, I mean, I know it hasn't happened, often, but
different forms of punishment.
People by there are so many different forms, like the stretch thing, blah blah blah. Like, you ever been to the Tower of London?
Yeah, the guillotine.
Have you been? Have you been? The guillotine is the best way to go.
The best way to go.
One of the guillotine, you get to stand on stage. Motherfucker, and you get to stand up there and make a speech in front of all the people watching, and then they lop your head off, and you probably don't even feel it, as long as the blade is sharp.
Assuming
and
it's
no
sharp,
meat stuck in the in the trap, right? Like, as long as the blade is sharp, you wouldn't feel your head's fucking lopped off, and you're like that, like this.
Yeah,
that's like one of the better ways to go. Like, you don't want to be cut up on a rack, like, and have all your limbs dismembered one joint at a time.
Yeah, it's torturing. That's what it comes
right.
down
That's
to,
torture.
Penalty,
so it's
right?
like, these are the things that like you don't want to happen, right? So, but we still do them to this day. And man is capable of absolutely the most brutal things in history, and we are the only species that does that type of thing.
I know. It's crazy that listen, I hear you. I don't get the motivation behind one's, as they would say, it's predetermined to hurt somebody else in that regard. I mean, here's another case that's kind of similar. Like, do you remember Jodi Arias? Like, that they found her completely guilty of all charges, where she basically cut up her boyfriend in the shower and blew him away with a couple of gunshots. I mean, it was really kind of horrific how she kind of executed him, But even going back even further to other criminal cases like this, like look at Jeffrey Dahmer, like in the recent case with this guy blended up his wife. Jeffrey Dahmer would actually cook the bodies and actually eat he would actually put it into a hot pot of water and actually cook it and actually eat it. Like the sanity. But the thing is, like, it doesn't faze them. It's just like, another day, another day. I'm not even considering my actions, the ramifications, nothing. It's just like, I can't get over this whole like incentive.
And let me ask you another question. That's like, what do you think America's obsession with these like trauma laced, like, I would say, like, these are like, I wouldn't even know, like, warm hugs for people that have had deep-seated trauma, that they go and watch these like documentaries and listen to these podcasts about, or watch these like biopics about all the murders. Like, what is it? What's our obsession with this shit? Like, in America, like, I think
again, so you mean like, what's our obsession with like wanting to see more of these stories come on out and like getting
like, well, why do we need, okay, for example, why do we need to see something on the Menendez brothers, and especially the advertisement looks like the two dudes are about to fuck each other?
Yeah. Well, someone said
like,
to me,
what's going on?
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, like, I think it's all being exposed to us in a way where the media has a way of putting in front of us the common consumer to get us involved with it, because as someone said, the court cases is theater. That's what it really is. Like, you want to it's the theater of like watching people go to the court cases, have all the evidence, have all the stories brought on out. And it's almost like watching like a political debate without the politics in it. It's like, do you really believe in this person's story? Do you really believe this person actually did it? And it's just like, you learn like the lengths of like the actions that was developed from start to finish. And that's what it really is. It's being put in front of us as entertainment, right?
Do you know
again,
the first court case?
Yeah.
The first court case aired on television? Like the first time the television camera was inside a courtroom? Do you know the case?
I'm going with Manson. That's my guess. I could be wrong, but he's my first one.
No. The first time they were inside the courtroom was the Pamela Smart trial in 1991, where guess what? The bitch murdered her husband. So it's like, again, like these, here we go. This domestic abuse, spousal, like, and I, for one, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I'll take this stance where I bet most of the men have it coming to them.
What do you mean by that? When you say
I bet you there's been some type of like in these like marriages where there's like abuse or some type of like mental or physical, they go after the spouse. There are definitely cases where the woman is just as insane as the man would be, and they've done something for some fucked up reason just because there's some psychotic or
right
sociopath. But I think like a lot of the guys, like you read these stories and the backstory is that they have some history of abuse. And then finally, like the woman steps up and shoots him. And like there are also stories, and like, no, I didn't do the research, but I know for a fact there are also stories about women who have defended themselves for years and like shot their husbands who have, beat them multiple times and then gone to jail.
So you're a proponent of the fact that a lot of these, these incidents, these killings, these, so on and so forth, it's from people who actually was,
are victims.
They're victims themselves, grew up and like bottled it up, buried it, and then somehow it came out later on.
Well, maybe not just from a young age. Maybe the trauma was at some other stage, but yeah, like this type of. I'm not a psychologist, but like from what I've read about these cases, they kind of all have this theme of there's definitely some type of trauma that's like triggered these reactions in people that have made them react.
Well, yeah, it's not impossible. Listen, that's a fact. This is definitely a powerful and real and evidence-based factor. But then you have guys like Ted Bundy, who he had a very happy childhood, lived with his grandparents. There was no sign of abuse or foul play, etc. And then again, he was literally like a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was a good-looking dude. The guy was very well spoken. He was articulate. He was very polite. He held a good conversation. And yet this guy was the most psychopathic guy. It's like, I don't know if they see something or there's a chemical imbalance. I also think, I think, yes, I think that's part of it. I don't think that's mainly it. I think also deep down inside that we as people are very fascinated with like the criminal justice system and how people either can maneuver around it, through the legal system, or I think just realistically the lengths that people kind of take to sort of like set the crime up, complete the crime, and then still go on without having ever been caught or even have any, any repercussions to their actions. There's, for example, like this is kind of related. If you go on Netflix, right, there's a show, it's called The Worst Roommates Ever. Right? Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't, but they're short documentaries, about an hour and a half long. And they're real.
I haven't watched it, but I've seen it.
Right. But they're real case by case incidences of like people actually running and getting involved with really bad people who actually fit the profile of criminals or psychopaths or people who just basically are really unstable. And in the shows, in each of these segments, they actually explain like who these people were, they, what they did for a living. They were just unsuspecting people. And little did you know, they actually were the most violent, devilish people that you never could have imagined. So I think it really comes down to like that, plus their ability to maneuver around the legal system in that regard. It's like, how could someone get away with this? Like, what was the research they did, or that's my personal opinion. Like
knowing the line that they can't cross to be able to fuck with people within the letter of the law.
Look at Casey Anthony. Like, she's the best example out of this. She got off, and everyone knows she did it. You can go back to OJ. OJ, the glove didn't fit. That's a whole other thing. But like, they got away with it. Every John Doe says like, no, the fucker's guilty, and like, but in the court of law, it's right where you can tell.
Now we're reliving this the Lacey Peterson story, right? Like the show, Scott Peterson and that. Like they just put that out. It's like one after another. One of the stories that I do find pretty good though is only murders in the building. I don't know if you've gotten to check that out yet, but it is great with Selena Gomez, Martin Lawrence, or excuse me.
I saw it a little bit of it.
With Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. It is so good, dude. I think that it's funny.
You know what I'm actually more involved with, believe it or not, I knock on wood. One that I find myself guilty of like getting involved, invested in, almost becoming like one of those internet detectives that you kind of hear about. It's really about like and I hate to say this, it's really like the child abduction stories that you heard about over the last years. Like, stay with me on this. So you have, remember who Matt Walsh is? Everyone knows who Matt Walsh is, right? Like, he was an investor in upstate New York, went to Florida. His son was abducted from, a serial killer. And actually he decapitated his 5-year-old son. Can you believe that? There's a story back in the early 80s of Johnny Gosch. He was a paper boy. I believe he was in Iowa, and he was kidnapped. They couldn't find him for years and years. There's been investigations like, where did he go? Who kidnapped him? There were stories around, there's like really powerful organizations that sell and traffic kids for sex, like in the movie Taken, right? Like, that's a real thing that still goes on.
That's
like,
a real thing, man. That's a real fucking thing.
It's disgusting, but like, I'm more invested in, like, I'm not saying more, but like, those are the ones that really get me concerned for the world that we live in. And those are the stories that I actually like really want to know, like, well, what happened? Like, how did this go? Like, how did this happen? And this is why now we as Americans not Americans, but like we as a population don't have a very problem with trusting people now. Sebastian Maniscalco, the comedian, actually made a joke about this. He's like, years ago, you get a knock at the door. Kids would run up with their socks. Like, who's at the door? All the kids and all the parents. Hey, welcome to my house. Now, when you get a knock at the door, it's like everyone says, "Shh, quiet. Go hide over there. Don't answer the door. They'll go away." It's like we've lost the trust in people, and hence why the need for more, security is why all homes have camera systems now. Cell phones have cameras. People are putting trackers in people's bags now. Like, they're making it very, more
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, why can we shoot a chip into the ass of a dog, but I can't shoot a chip into the ass of my kids?
Because in the eyes of the law, humans have more civil rights than an animal do. It's just seen a little differently.
But we are their legal guardian and responsible there for their protection until the age of majority, 18, right?
Right.
The best way to protect my children is to be able to not know where they are at all times, but to be able to locate them in an emergency, or should, God forbid, that happen. Because I'll tell you right now, there's no jail that I wouldn't do time in, bro. There's no jail on earth that I wouldn't do time in.
I agree with you. I know you would.
Right? Like,
yeah,
I would.
I think any father would.
I would fuck and be fucked every day for the rest of my life in jail.
Yeah.
After, to find those people and do some of the things that we just talked about.
No, listen, man, I get it. And listen, I wish it was that simple. I mean, listen, there's a lot of things involved with it. I don't think it's just simply in putting in a tracker. Like, you ever see the movie A Beautiful Mind, when Russell Crowe, like, he was sick in the head. He thought like he was being hired by the FBI, and they put a tracker in his arm. Like, I understand there's like that theory, and that's a possibility, but
I would be open about it.
Right. But I mean, listen, but then you also run to the conspiracy theorists. Like, remember how when the COVID vaccines came out, oh, it's really Bill Gates. Like, he's actually like putting microchips inside the vaccine so Microsoft can keep tracks of all of us. It's all whatever. It's not just a simple like black or white area. Because now you're talking about companies getting invested into monitoring the chip, the hygiene of this chip or technology, updating the right? Like, when your computer crashes, you need a computer, like, there's a company building a new computer so you can just kind of go and replace it. I don't think it's that simple by just, going into someone's body and like, oh, let's replace this chip and do it again. Like, I don't think it's that simple, let alone the legality of it, let alone just, the overall
let's start talking about it. Let's start talking about it. Right. Because like that's the ultimate safety net, that, I mean, then, people are going to know, I mean, eventually that'll get out, but like, at least you could react, within that
So,
first 24
I guess
hours,
I'll throw it to you now. Here's another scenario. So let's just use your example. I'm going to throw it back to you. So let's say one day magically, yep, okay, everyone gets a chip inside them someplace, whether it's their brain, their hand, whatever. Now let's say all of a sudden people refuse that. They say, I don't want this thing inside of me. And then you have to deal with that population. But then on the other side, you got the people who are just idiots or lack thereof and say, hey, listen, where's your chip? Oh, mine's my arm. Where's your chip? Oh, it's the back of my knee. Okay, let's swap out chips. Let's just do it. Let's be idiots now. You're going to get those people as well who are just going to basically shit on the entire security of the whole idea behind it. So I guess
I'm not saying that it's something that you do for life. Basically what you're talking about is creating jobs. You're saying that there's now a new industry created. You've just proposed an entire new industry where you've got people that need to, updates to tracking software. We've got to launch satellites. We need, finance teams and accountants. We've got to get the whole operation running, because once we're able to do this, it's a completely at will thing. And at the age of majority, people, and what I would say is that I would hope that we need updates, because you would want to check, not wait until your kid was gone to do a check. Hey, every 3 years or every 2 years, you got to come back in. And then the kid's going to become aware and be like, hey, what the fuck do you mean you put something in my butt? In my cheek. What do you think? What were you thinking? Or they could say, wow, okay, I'm cool with that. I guess you're right. For now, I'm cool with that. And I bet you a lot of people would be, right? Okay, perfect example. How many people don't have cell phones? Because that's a harder number to track down than do. And that is a chip. So people that were like, oh, well, Microsoft's going to jam a chip in my arm. It's like they already put one in your pocket. They don't need to put one in your arm. You're keeping your phone on you for the vast majority of the time, giving your exact location. You have that on you. They know where you are. You don't need a chip.
But you're also putting a foreign substance into your body. Your body's not going to react to this chip the way that you do when a vitamin gets put in. It's metal. It has electronics in it. For example,
dude, if a dog could take it, a human could take it. Come on.
But no, that's not the way the world sees it as. It's not just
only because of rights. So it's okay.
Well, right. Yeah. Because
let's take it to another degree. Let's say that you were in a relationship where you were like, you know what? We're going to chip each other. We're going to put a chip in each other's asses because we want to know where we are 100% of the time. So now you are of age, you're in your 30s, you're married. I love you. I love you. I love you. Just in case, you're so beautiful, someone's going to steal you away from me. Right? I want to put a chip in you. Okay, baby. I want you to be able to come and rescue me. Blah, blah, blah. There's an industry there. So it's not just about children. You could make that, for all generations, all ages, or Alzheimer's patients and people with dementia that are in home care that could wander away, that, need to be supervised, so it's more than just a necklace. It's more than just a phone. The kids now, they just had an IDing session for student ID cards that also included bracelets. What the fuck is a bracelet going to do? Yeah, sure. If you're lost, somebody will return you like a dog.
All right. Again. So I'll throw this back out there. So let's say, here's only two other issues I see with it. Well, I see the value and the good of it, but there's also through the pros weigh out the cons, and here's some cons to consider. Let's say you have a magic wand and tomorrow you create these chips or whatever it is that you want to inject into people just to make sure you're keeping tabs on people, specifically your family members. So the first one that comes to the issue is people are already skeptic and already paranoid about the government and anyone through the internet monitoring what they're doing through technology as it is. Cell phones, internet, Google, laptops, so on and so forth. There's a phobia around that. And the more people kind of talk about that, about keeping, connections to, higher entities and agencies to monitor your activity for safety, you're basically opening up the doors to you as well. So number one is, let's say you do that. Now you have people who are going to, let's say this chip that this company develops, whether it's a company or a conjunction with other companies, they're now monitoring you and where you are. So the first concern is like, well, if that's the case, they know where John D is, or if they know where Susie Q is, don't you think that makes it a little more easier for them to find them, locate them, and actually abduct them just the same factor because now they know where you are?
I love that, Anthony. That's like, because that's such an opinion. And this is a Jon Stewart quote. People's fear of a dystopian future is preventing them to accept the reality of, I guess this is a paraphrase, preventing them from accepting the reality of today's dystopian present. Mm-hmm. Like, we're living in a fucked up society. But because people are like, well, down the road they can track us. It's like, well, no, they can now, and they do. So what the fuck are you talking about? The government's not abducting anybody. If the government decided tomorrow to turn on the people, there would be drones flying and bombarding us with missiles before you could blink an eye.
Well, yeah, listen, I'm not saying that at all, but also there's another part to this as well. Like, I'm just saying that's a possibility. It could be government related. It could also be like private company related. This is a capitalist country, so a private company can actually get the product to market, then launch it, and then can join another bigger entity. But like, there's that fear and phobia, and not everyone's gonna buy that because a lot of people choose to live off the grid. And some people who do use the internet are still phobic of that. But then look at the other side to it. Let's say we remove that piece of it. Let's say it gets hacked, right? Like, look what happened to Target several years ago when they got hacked, or look what happened to the recent banks. I think, what was it, Merrill Lynch? No, it was a TD Bank. No, it was a bank, not Bank of America. I don't know which bank recently got hacked, but like, let's say the chip or the technology gets hacked by someone from Germany or Russia or China. Like, what then? Like, you got to think of the ramifications of that. Like, it's not just simply put it in there and like set and forget it. Like, you're dealing with people's lives in the aftermath. Because
so I looked. I just checked this on the RAI.
Yeah.
Around the world, there are about 1 billion to 1.5 billion people that they're saying live off the grid. That means like they don't have a phone just in their pocket. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a relatively small percentage, Anthony, but that doesn't mean that they're not being monitored or that there's not some type of like location for them, because they're living in areas that are remote enough where you would be able to assess via, again, drone or satellite, the relative population in the area. Facial recognition has become huge. And we talked about this on a prior episode where, we believe the future of that metaverse is going to be based on like that facial recognition, where ads in stores and in public will be targeted specifically to you based on, that facial thing. So, dude, we're already there. Like, we should be doing everything in our power to make our children and our communities safe outside of invoking the fucking perch.
Yeah, no, I see. So let me ask another question then, because since this is a juicy topic. So let's say, to your point, there's 1 billion, there's 20% of the global population that's off the grid, right? That can mean they don't have a laptop, they don't have a cell phone, or both, or they kind of did what what some people do. They just literally just like shut everything off and literally just take their money, put it into a mattress in the middle of the jungle somewhere, and you'll never find them, right? You have those people. So what would be your plan then to sort of get those people on board, or to find those individuals and to make sure there's a tracking system in there? Because technically, the people who are actually off grid are the ones you should also be mostly concerned about, because you don't know who these people are, where they are, and they're actually the ones operating off the secured system where we don't know who they are, what they're doing. They're the ones who are sort of like going under the radar, lack of a better way of saying, and actually operating as they would. So like, what would be your plan to do that? How would you actually get a campaign like that to track the 20-30% that's out there? And again, 1 billion people, while
Anthony, this is not a government program that I'm trying to install.
No, I'm just asking
this is
you,
like, completely
no. The question is just very blanketed. Like, John, you are the leader, you're the orchestrator. This is in your power. It's your job to get everyone this chip, however you see fit. For
all security, 7 billion people. Why would I want to do that?
Also, because again, we have the people we need to worry about, which is fine. But then you have to worry about the other people that are up. You can't just negate them.
But I don't want that. I don't want that to be the case. I'm saying that it's like, as a parent, as a guardian, I would like to have my kid chipped. I would not like to be chipped as a 38-year-old. So I would go, when I'm 18 or 19, or when I go off to college, Yeah, definitely. When I left for college, I'm getting that chip removed.
Yeah, but don't you think that's kind of scary though? Like you are basically telling your children, you need to get this, but I'm not going to get this. It's
No,
okay. You're going
because
to get, but
it's
I'm not going
saying
to get
that like, hey, I had one when if it was available, hey, I had this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The reason you have this is because if somebody takes you, if somebody would abduct you, I wouldn't know what to do, and there would be a very small chance of us being able to find you.
That's fine, but let's look at the other side of it. Let's say that you don't get the other 2.5 billion, 1.5 billion people, right? Let's say your children are chipped, right? You know where they are, but in the same fashion, like that person can easily infiltrate someone, do their bidding, and leave, and you wouldn't know who it actually was. You just know like where the person currently is. Don't you think that you need to look on the other side of it and know, okay, well, if the person I care about is chipped and somebody else is nearby, I know they're chipped. It just makes the tracking and security even more precise.
Okay, so Anthony, what you're telling me is you would like to chip every human on Earth.
I mean, don't you think if we're talking security, we can't just keep it again, we're talking in a fictional setting because I don't think this is actually going to happen anytime soon. But if you're talking completely security, and security is the most utmost importance, not just for your children, but all children out there and loved ones and married couples, et cetera, et cetera. Shouldn't you also know about the people who we don't know anything about?
Look, man,
who are walking around out there, right? It's not, yeah.
So people are so blind, and I'm saying what you're saying is blind because it's not, but like people are truly blind to the elements of tracking and like how you're tracked. Obviously, you're tracked from like the silly things like visuals, right? Like, if a camera sees you, that's the obvious thing. The credit cards at this point, I hope, would to people be an obvious thing. But it's also cameras exist in so many places now. Because it's not just you being caught on a security camera, it's you being caught on someone else's device, a personal device,
right?
That it could also have been monitored, that would catch your facial recognition. And then, if you have Google Lens, right? Like, some of my photos I upload to Google Lens and our photos, and I'll like wash people away or, blur use their effects. But what that means is it had to analyze that face or that person or that body or that arm or whatever it was in that photo to remove it. So that has been logged by the system. So it's like, it's very capable of doing that. And like, I mean, dude, it's already known that AI can basically use everybody's phone in the room. Like, let's say you're in a conference room in a building, in the middle of a building, a skyscraper. Everyone's got their phones in their pockets. AI can know with a virtual sonar by use of like the microphone on the phone to ping in the room and know where everybody's location is. Like that's already a technology, right? So it's like that type of stuff is like, it's beyond reproach. So I don't mean to say that I thought about this, but think about like, let's say you were thinking you were about to get away with a murder and you left your phone at home. Hey, I'm at home. It's a Saturday night. I'm with the family. Hey, of course, like they're in. Right. Like my wife is at. Of course he was home. You left your phone at home. You avoided all traffic cameras and everything. What's the thing that's going to get you caught, no matter how safe you are with like all the disgusting parts later down the road?
Well, it's
your car.
I don't know. Yeah, the car. Right. Yeah, your car.
Right. So unless you drive a car made before computers were installed, which is like pre-90s, right? Like I think most 90s cars even came with some type of computer device inside. Those also would be able to get pinged, right? Or low jack. And all, if you have a car with navigation today, like, these are the types of things that like everybody is monitored. We need to get away from this sense of, oh, I have privacy. We have privacy from our neighbors, which heightens what we were talking about, our aggression and our hostility or the lack of trust, because everything's private. But the truth is, companies, there have been so many data breaches, Anthony. All our information's out there. Every fucking social security number has been leaked. Let's just be clear, right? Like everyone is out there right now Shouldn't these motherfuckers just rerun the numbers? Make it an extra couple of digits, reissue it to everybody, call it a new one.
So you're
what
saying,
the fuck are we doing? Like everybody's been hacked, everybody's been monitored. We're all fucked.
Yeah. So you're taking the stance. So you're taking the stance of you want people to stop basically saying, hey, like, I don't want to get on board with any new initiatives for security, because you're saying that their tone is, I just don't want anyone looking at what I'm doing or knowing what I'm doing for my own privacy, because that's my business. And you're like, get over it. Like, everyone knows who you are already. They know probably where you live. I can search your name right now. All I need is just your name, maybe like the first letter of the street address. You're on Google. Like, it's all there. You can buy people's information now, is what you're saying. You're basically saying,
okay,
cut the shit.
Anthony,
that's what you're saying,
I'll tell you a
right?
perfect example. Yes.
Okay.
That is exactly what I'm saying. And I'm telling you that I did this. I had a contractor, this piece of shit cocksucker. Okay, let's just call
tell us what you really think about him, huh?
All right. So it's piece of shit cocksucker, and then we'll call his cousin douchebag McGee. Right. So these two fucks do this shit job on my house.
Yep. To
the point where I needed to now track those motherfuckers down. And what did I do? Just what you said. I paid $10. Actually, I paid $10 because I forgot to shut off the free trial. Okay. I paid a couple bucks, got all their fucking information, their house address, their prior address, know where they are, know where they live, know who their wives are, know who their kids are, and all this kind of shit in an instant. To be able to provide that to an attorney, just to be clear. Okay. So with that just straight up knowledge, the what we'll call it, the over the counter knowledge, that's nothing. But you go to a fucking chef, you go to you go get a prescription, you're using the dark web, you're using like these other things, you're gonna get your people have your shit. Your dick is out there. Like, let's just be clear. Anything you've ever sent, anything you've ever done, anything you've ever talked about, it's all out there. And what I've said before, and I'm not sure if we've said it on the show, but what I've always been a proponent of, which I think would be a huge step forward in this country, is a turn back to some of the large scale government projects that were around, to get us out of, the Depression. Under the New Deal. And like one of the new projects I was always really strongly felt about was installing like a nationwide fiber optic internet line where people would get paid to move around the country and install basically a nationwide fiber optic system that would provide internet as a public utility, like absolutely free. Basically, you basically just plug in and it's there like electricity or anything else. That line would be monitored by the government. Anything you said, did, or anything otherwise would obviously be subject to their surveillance at some point. But I'm not a fucking communist. I'm a somewhat of a socialist, where I believe that private companies like a Verizon or an AT&T should still be able to operate and provide consumers with top tier security, so that the things that they did were subject to, again, like First Amendment rights and constitutional rights, that like, hey, I didn't sign up for the government landline. I'm using a private dedicated landline that I'm paying for privacy on. So no, you don't have access to this without a warrant, or if I didn't do something wrong, you don't have probable cause. You cannot come in and search my computer or anything like that. So like, I think like that's where I am a huge proponent of. People need to just accept the reality of where we are, because we're living in it and we're just too fucking blind to accept it.
So again, like, just to add to your point, like, we're kind of, yes, we are kind of there. And, but again, like, just something that I don't know if you heard about this in the news, but like, to your chip point and your chip idea, like, they're already doing the experiments right now with that. I don't know about Elon Musk's company, Neuralink, what they're doing. They're actually implanting, right? Like, they're actually doing that right now, where now people can access the internet from their brain and how it's actually interacting with the signals and the connections and the ability to transcribe information as fast as it's interpreting. So they are actually doing it. And the realize, listen, man, at the end of the day, I don't think there's really kind of like a perfect system out there. I really don't. I think there's always going to be evil. There's always going to be something that, for every solution that's out there, someone's going to find a way around it. Like there's no such thing as an ironclad solution. If we go your route, right? The route is everybody should get the chip in them. If that actually does exist, you can't go a whole world without having it. And you can't be selective. That's just my opinion, because you got to keep track of the people who are living off the grid and what they're doing and how they're operating. That's just, again,
I think it leads us to, I like that, man. And I think it leads us to like a really great subject for maybe next time where, we can kind of talk about, our life and death, really thoughts, like, what we think the future will look like for people, right? Will it look more like timeless, where we're stealing time and people can buy more time, or are we looking at more of a transcendence reality where you can upload your basically yourself, your consciousness to the cloud and continue to live as AI,
right,
with the past that John D in the flesh had? And no, you wouldn't have a physical form unless they dropped you into a fucking robot. Or that might be a good one for us to talk about. There's a lot of pop culture on that, man. A lot of movies.
There is. And this is my last switch. This is the last point, and we'll wrap it up, folks. To John's point, and so we were talking about, or the other solution is, if that's the route you think that we can go into, the only other solution towards that is, again, if you're not going to put every microchip inside everyone, then the only way to prevent a crime or an incident is to really have telekinetics, like in the movie Minority Report, right? Where you were stopping the crime right before it happened, and you could actually judge and prosecute people on their actions even before the crime actually took place. That actually seems more plausible for the future if we go your chip route, because now people can actually start actually finding
I already referenced Minority Report with my marketing ideas. So yes, but 2 Minority Report references in the same episode. You heard it here. But yes, awesome, Anthony. Guys, make sure you follow us: Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Say hi to a little boy if you're watching. Love you guys. Bigger and louder with Anthony and John coming at you. Season 2, baby. Follow us.